Keanu Reeves walked into his own motorcycle dealership disguised as an ordinary customer, worn leather jacket, faded jeans. No one recognized the Hollywood star who actually owned the place. He just wanted to check on customer service. What he heard instead made his blood run cold. Two men behind him were whispering about buying stolen bikes at half price. And the name they mentioned, his most trusted warehouse manager of 3 years. That guy Reeves is too busy counting his millions to notice what's happening under his nose. What Keanu discovered next would expose a criminal conspiracy that reached far deeper than anyone imagined. And the betrayal, it came from the people he trusted most. Keanu Reeves stood before his bathroom mirror, barely recognizing the man staring back at him. Gone was the neatly trimmed salt and pepper beard he usually maintained. In its place, 3 days of unkempt stubble shadowed his jaw. His typically well-groomed hair now lay hidden beneath a worn baseball cap. The designer jacket hanging in his closet had been traded for a faded leather coat, its surface cracked and weathered from years of use. The transformation was deliberate. After all, no one would believe a supposed motorcycle enthusiast who looked like he had just stepped off a Hollywood set. The idea had struck him 3 nights earlier during yet another sleepless evening spent reviewing quarterly reports. Pacific Coast Motors, the premium motorcycle dealership he had poured 15 years of his life into building, was showing troubling patterns in its customer satisfaction surveys. Nothing catastrophic, just subtle dips that most owners might dismiss. But Keanu had not built the most respected motorcycle dealership in Los Angeles by ignoring small details. He adjusted the thick, framed prescription glasses that completed his disguise. The irony was not lost on him. 15 years ago, he had started as a mechanic with grease, stained hands and dreams too big for his modest garage. Now, he had to dress down just to blend in with the very customers he once counted himself among. "Time to see how the other half lives," he murmured, tilting the cap lower over his forehead. His cover story was simple. Mark Thompson, a software developer who had recently cashed in some stock options, looking to fulfill a long, delayed dream of owning a high-end motorcycle. It was believable enough to maintain and close enough to his own personality that he could sustain the facade without slipping. The morning air carried a pleasant crispness as Keanu pulled his rental car into the dealership parking lot, not into his reserved spot near the entrance, but into the general customer area. His heart raced with unexpected nervousness as he killed the engine. Strange, he thought, to feel anxious about walking into a building he owned. The glass doors of Pacific Coast Motors slid open with a soft whisper. The showroom gleamed beneath strategic lighting. Rows of pristine motorcycles catching the morning sun through floor-to-ceiling windows. The subtle scent of leather and polish filled the air, a detail he had specifically requested when designing the store years ago. A few early customers wandered between displays, wearing that familiar expression of desire mixed with calculation. "Welcome to Pacific Coast Motors." The greeting came from a young woman with auburn hair pulled back neatly. Her name tag read Vanessa Cole. Keanu had reviewed her hiring file weeks ago, but had never met her directly. She was one of the newer sales associates, brought on about 3 months prior with impressive references. "Can I help you find anything specific today?" Vanessa asked, her smile bright and professional. But Keanu noticed how her eyes traveled over his appearance, the faded leather jacket, the worn jeans, the scuffed sneakers. Her smile remained, but something behind it cooled. "Just looking for now," Keanu replied, deliberately pitching his voice higher than normal. "Been saving up for this for a while." Of course, Vanessa's enthusiasm dimmed noticeably. "Our newest Ducati Panigale V4S just came in. Beautiful machines." She gestured vaguely toward the display, but made no move to escort him. Instead, her attention drifted toward another customer who had just entered, a man in a tailored suit, carrying himself with unmistakable wealth. Keanu watched her redirect her energy toward the better-dressed newcomer. He filed the observation away. For the next hour, he immersed himself in the customer experience. He asked detailed questions about different models, noting how each salesperson responded. Some showed initial enthusiasm that faded when they assessed his modest appearance. Others seemed more interested in pushing quick sales than understanding his needs. One barely made eye contact while rattling off specifications. He made mental notes, already planning future training sessions. The real test came when Keanu showed interest in a limited edition BMW's 1000RR, one of the most expensive models on the floor. "Mind if I sit on it?" he asked, deliberately pulling out a worn leather wallet. Brandon Hayes, the sales manager, materialized from nowhere. Impeccably dressed in a fitted shirt and pressed slacks, he moved with practiced confidence. "Of course, sir. Let me grab the keys to release the security chain." Keanu caught Brandon's eyes flickering across his worn jacket, a slight frown crossing his face before professional courtesy masked it. As he straddled the motorcycle, feeling the familiar ergonomics of a machine he had actually helped design custom modifications for, Keanu engaged in the expected haggling dance. "Look," Brandon leaned in, lowering his voice conspiratorially. "I probably shouldn't do this, but I might be able to work something out with the price. The owner is a real numbers guy, but I've got some flexibility. What's your budget looking like?" Keanu suppressed a smile. The owner, that would be me. He was about to push further when a snippet of conversation from behind made his blood run cold. Two customers had moved closer, their voices barely above whispers. Under normal circumstances, their words would have been lost in the showroom's ambient noise, but Keanu's heightened awareness made their exchange crystal clear. He studied them through his peripheral vision. One wore a leather vest over a white t-shirt, arms covered in faded tattoos that told stories of a life lived hard. The other was younger, dressed too expensively for someone supposedly seeking illegal deals, designer jeans, limited edition sneakers, and a watch that probably cost more than some entry-level bikes on the floor. "Man, these prices are insane," the younger one said loudly, then dropped his voice. "Good thing we know better, right?" The tattooed man nodded, pulling out his phone. "Got the contact right here. Guy named Marcus has been hooking people up for months. Never had a complaint." The name hit Keanu like a physical blow. Marcus Webb, his warehouse manager of 3 years. The same Marcus who had suggested implementing the new inventory tracking system 6 months ago. The same Marcus who always volunteered for late night inventory counts. "How does it work?" the younger one asked, flipping through a glossy catalog with exaggerated disinterest. "Simple. You pick what you want. Marcus marks it as damaged in the system. Bike disappears during transport to the repair facility." The tattooed man made air quotes with his fingers. "And shows up wherever you want it. Half price, cash only." Keanu's fingers clenched around the handlebar. The missing inventory reports, the increased number of damaged units, the discrepancies in transport logs, everything clicked into place with sickening clarity. "Sounds too good to be true," the younger one mused. "What's stopping the owner from figuring it out?" A sharp laugh from the tattooed man cut through the air. "Reeves. That guy's too busy counting his millions to notice what's happening under his nose. Besides, Marcus has got it all covered in the computer system. Swaps serial numbers with junked bikes. Makes everything look legit on paper." The casual dismissal stung more than Keanu expected. Was this how his employees saw him? Some distant figure too removed from daily operations to notice theft happening right in front of him. His hands remained frozen on the handlebars, knuckles white. 15 years of building his reputation. 15 years of ensuring every sale was legitimate, every customer treated fairly, and someone was running a shadow operation right under his nose. Brandon was still talking about financing options, but Keanu barely heard the words. His mind raced through possibilities, calculating implications, remembering every small discrepancy he had dismissed as computer errors. Somewhere in the gleaming showroom of Pacific Coast Motors, Among the polished chrome and pristine leather, a betrayal had taken root. The man he had trusted to guard his inventory was the very one stealing it, and Keanu Reeves, disguised in his worn jacket and faded jeans, had just stumbled onto the first threads of a conspiracy that threatened everything he had built. Keanu forced himself to remain still on the motorcycle, his fingers wrapped around the handlebars as if they were the only thing keeping him anchored to reality. Brandon was still talking somewhere beside him, words about financing options and monthly payments floating through the air like meaningless noise. But Keanu's attention had locked on to the two customers behind him with the intensity of a man whose world had just shifted beneath his feet. He adjusted the side mirror slowly, using the reflection to observe them without turning his head. The tattooed man was scrolling through his phone now, his weathered fingers moving across the screen with casual confidence. The younger one in designer clothes had moved closer, lowering his voice even further. "When can we meet him?" the younger one asked. "Tonight, behind the service lot at 1100. Bring cash. 50 grand for that Ducati you were eyeing. No paperwork, no questions." Keanu's mind immediately flashed to the new Ducati Panigale V4R that had arrived just last week, listed retail price at 80,000. The mathematics of loss crashed through his thoughts with brutal clarity. Not just the stolen bikes themselves, but the insurance implications, the potential legal consequences, the catastrophic damage to his reputation if this ever became public knowledge. 50,000 for an 80,000 motorcycle. How many times had this happened? How many bikes had disappeared while he reviewed reports that had been carefully manipulated to hide the truth? "Sir, are you all right?" Brandon's voice cut through his spiraling thoughts. Keanu realized he had been gripping the handlebars so tightly that his knuckles had gone pale. "I'll need to think about it," Keanu heard himself say, his voice remarkably steady despite the storm raging in his chest. "Mind if I walk around a bit more? Want to be absolutely sure about such a big investment." "Of course, sir. Take your time." Brandon reached into his pocket and produced a business card, holding it out with a practiced smile. "I'm here all day if you have any questions. Just ask for Brandon." Keanu accepted the card with a nod, sliding off the BMW with deliberate slowness. His legs felt unsteady beneath him as he moved away, but he forced himself to maintain the casual gait of an undecided customer. He was careful not to look directly at the two men whose conversation had just shattered everything he believed about his business. But his peripheral vision caught everything: their relaxed postures, their careful nonchalance. The way they seemed to be waiting for something, as if this showroom visit was merely a formality before the real transaction took place in the shadows. The two customers moved toward the exit. The tattooed man made a deliberate show of taking one of Brandon's business cards from the display stand near the door. "Well, definitely be back to test ride some bikes," he called out loudly. "Pacific Coast Motors, the investigation." His voice carrying across the showroom. "Got to shop around. You know how it is." Keanu watched them leave through the gleaming glass doors, his own reflection appearing like a ghost among the motorcycles. The pride he had felt about his dealership just hours ago had transformed into something darker. His sanctuary had been corrupted, turned into a front for criminals who viewed his life's work as nothing more than an opportunity for easy money. A new customer walked through the entrance, and Vanessa moved to offer assistance. Keanu barely noticed. His gaze drifted across the showroom, seeing it now through different eyes. The strategic lighting that had once seemed welcoming now felt like it was hiding shadows. He glanced at his watch. 20:30 in the afternoon. 8.5 hours until the meeting behind the service lot. His fingers itched to call the police immediately to shut this whole operation down before another motorcycle disappeared. But the investigator in him urged caution. Rush this and he might miss something crucial. There could be more people involved. The operation could extend beyond Marcus into networks he could not yet see. He made his way toward the exit, playing the part of the undecided customer until the very end. "Thanks for all the help," he called out to Vanessa as he approached the door. She looked up from her conversation with the new customer, offering him a polite smile that did not quite reach her eyes. "I'll need to sleep on it." "Of course, sir. We hope to see you again soon." The glass doors slid shut behind him, and Keanu felt the weight of his discovery pressing down like a physical burden. The afternoon sun was warm on his face, but he felt cold inside. The gleaming motorcycles in the window display caught the light beautifully, their perfect surfaces revealing nothing of the darkness that lurked behind them. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out and stared at the screen. A text message from an unknown number. "Meeting confirmed for tonight, 11 p.m. Bring cash." They had gotten his number from the customer information card he had filled out when he first arrived, information that was supposed to be used for follow-up sales calls. Instead, it had been harvested for something far more sinister. The audacity stunned him. They were so confident in their scheme that they were not even being careful. They had added a potential customer to their network without a second thought, never imagining that the man in the worn leather jacket was the very owner they had dismissed as too distracted to notice. Keanu stared at the message, his jaw tight. The anger simmering beneath his shock began to rise, hot and sharp, but he pushed it down, forced it into a corner of his mind where it could fuel his determination without clouding his judgment. Tonight's meeting was not just about one stolen bike, it was his chance to expose the entire operation. But first, he needed to understand exactly what he was walking into. Marcus and the two customers were just the visible parts of this conspiracy. Somewhere in his dealership, hidden in plain sight, were the rest of the pieces. He pocketed his phone and walked toward his rental car. He needed a place to work, somewhere quiet, where he could dig into the dealership's records without being noticed. The coffee shop 2 blocks away would do perfectly. As he unlocked his car, Keanu took one last look at Pacific Coast Motors. The building stood proud against the afternoon sky, its glass walls reflecting clouds and sunshine. From the outside, it looked exactly as he had always imagined it, a temple to his passion, a monument to everything he had built. But now he knew the truth. Behind those gleaming walls, a cancer had been growing, and tonight, one way or another, he would begin to cut it out. The local coffee shop, 2 blocks from the dealership, became Keanu's temporary command center. He settled into a corner booth with his laptop, positioning himself where he could see both the entrance and the street outside. The afternoon crowd had thinned, leaving only a handful of customers scattered across the worn wooden tables. He logged into the dealership system remotely, a feature that Marcus himself had recommended installing 6 months ago. The irony was not lost on him. The very tool designed to make management more convenient had now become the instrument of his investigation. "Can I get you anything else?" The barista's voice pulled his attention momentarily. She was eyeing his untouched Americano, which had gone cold sometime during the past hour. "I'm good, thanks," Keanu muttered, his eyes returning to the screen. The past 6 months of inventory records sprawled before him, each entry a potential clue to the scope of Marcus' operation. At first glance, everything looked normal, numbers aligned, reports balanced. Nothing seemed out of place. But Keanu had not built a successful business by accepting things at face value. He started cross-referencing serial numbers of damaged bikes with their original shipping manifests. The process was tedious, requiring him to open multiple windows and compare data line by line. But slowly, a pattern emerged, subtle at first, then undeniable. Every Tuesday and Thursday night, like clockwork, a high-end motorcycle would be marked as damaged. The repair facility paperwork was perfect, too perfect. The same standardized forms, the same diagnostic codes, the same estimated repair costs down to the last dollar. Real damage reports varied. Mechanics had their own shorthand, their own ways of describing problems, their own quirks in documentation. These reports lacked that human inconsistency. They were copies, probably generated from a template designed to pass cursory inspection. "Sliver Marcus," Keanu whispered, taking his first sip of the now cold coffee. The bitterness matched his mood, but not clever enough. A new window opened on his screen, this time the employee scheduling system. What he found made his stomach turn. Marcus had gradually adjusted the warehouse staffing over the past few months, ensuring he worked alone during specific night shifts. The changes had been so incremental, spread across different departments and buried among routine scheduling updates, that no one had noticed the pattern forming. His phone buzzed, a text from Garrett Stone, his head of security, wondering why he had not come in today. For a moment, Keanu considered confiding in him. Garrett had been with the company for 15 years. His loyalty had never been questioned. He was the kind of man who showed up early, stayed late, and treated every security concern as if the dealership were his own. But the same could have been said about Marcus until a few hours ago. "Sorry, feeling under the weather, taking a personal day," Keanu texted back. The lie left a bitter taste in his mouth, but he could not risk tipping his hand. Not yet. Not until he understood the full scope of what he was dealing with. He pulled up Marcus' personnel file next. The man's background check had been clean when he was hired, almost too clean in retrospect. Previous employment at 3 other dealerships, each for exactly 2 years. No criminal record. Excellent references that praised his work ethic and attention to detail. But something nagged at Keanu's instincts. A quick search revealed why. The first dealership Marcus had worked for went bankrupt shortly after his departure. Financial irregularities cited, but never fully explained. The second suffered a mysterious warehouse fire that destroyed their entire inventory. Insurance paid out, but the owners never reopened. The third closed following an insurance investigation that dragged on for months before quietly being dropped. None of these incidents had been directly linked to Marcus. His name appeared nowhere in any of the reports or investigations. He had always moved on before the consequences caught up, leaving others to deal with the wreckage. "You've done this before," Keanu realized, his fingers flying across the keyboard as he dug deeper into public records and news archives. "This is what you do." The pieces were falling into place now. Marcus was not just a dishonest employee who had spotted an opportunity. He was a professional, a specialist who moved from dealership to dealership, setting up sophisticated theft operations, extracting maximum value, and disappearing before anyone connected the dots. A movement outside the coffee shop window caught his attention. A familiar figure was walking past on the sidewalk. Vanessa Cole, the young sales associate, heading home after her shift. She paused to check her phone, and something in her posture made Keanu's suspicions flare. The way she kept glancing over her shoulder, the nervous energy in her movements, the tension in her jaw. His fingers found the payroll records. Vanessa had been hired 3 months ago, right after Marcus had requested an additional sales position. Her references were impeccable, just like Marcus had been. Too impeccable. "No," Keanu breathed, his chest tightening. It can't be, but the evidence was right there on his screen. Vanessa's previous employers matched Marcus' pattern perfectly, just offset by a few months. She had worked at 2 of the same dealerships, always arriving shortly after Marcus and leaving shortly before disaster struck. She was not just another sales associate. She was part of the operation, the customer-facing side of a scheme that Marcus managed from the warehouse. The betrayal cut deeper than Keanu had expected. He had watched Vanessa with customers earlier that morning. He had admired her product knowledge, her enthusiasm, her ability to connect with potential buyers. All of it had been an act, a carefully crafted performance designed to identify targets and build trust that would later be exploited. How many other employees were involved? His cursor hovered over the security alert button. One click would lock down the entire system, freeze all transactions, and notify the authorities, but years of business instinct held him back. Marcus and Vanessa were skilled, but they could not be working alone. Someone had to be forging the transport documents. Someone had to be managing the money trail. Someone had to be coordinating with buyers on the outside. His mind raced through the possibilities. Who had access to disable the security cameras in the warehouse area on the nights when bikes were marked as damaged? Garrett Stone, the head of security he had trusted for 15 years, who had the authority to approve transport documents and handle customer contracts. Brandon Hayes, the sales manager who had been promoted just 6 months ago, right when the problems began. The realization hit him like a wave of ice water. This was not a simple theft ring. It was a coordinated conspiracy involving multiple people at different levels of his organization. Each person had exactly the access they needed to make the operation work. A perfect triangle of deception. The coffee shop was emptying now, the afternoon crowd giving way to the quiet lull before the evening rush. Through the window, Keanu could see his dealership in the distance, its glass walls reflecting the setting sun. The sight that had once filled him with pride now seemed ominous, a beautiful facade hiding rot within. He pulled out his phone and made a call he never thought he would have to make. Los Angeles FBI Field Office. How may I direct your call? I need to report a criminal operation, Keanu said, keeping his voice low. Organized theft and possibly money laundering through a motorcycle dealership. The call was transferred twice before he reached someone who introduced herself as Special Agent Sarah Mitchell, or Keanu Reeves. She said after he had explained the basics of what he had discovered. I have to tell you, your call is not entirely unexpected. What do you mean? We've been tracking a criminal organization that uses motorcycle dealerships as fronts for their operations. They send in teams to set up theft rings, then use the stolen bikes to move cash across state lines. Your dealership matches the profile of their previous targets. Keanu felt his grip tighten on the phone. How long have you known about this? We've been building a case for months, but we didn't have confirmation of their current location until now. Your information fills in crucial gaps. There was a pause on the line. There's a meeting happening tonight, isn't there? Behind the service lot 1100, Keanu confirmed. I received a text about it. We'll have teams in position. But Mr. Reeves, I need you to understand something. These people are dangerous. They have connections to organized crime. You should let us handle this from here. Keanu stared out the window at his dealership, watching the last rays of sunlight paint the glass walls in shades of orange and gold. I understand, he said quietly, but I need to be there. I need to see this for myself. Agent Mitchell was silent for a moment. I can't stop you from being on your own property, but stay back, observe only. Do not engage with anyone and do not put yourself in danger. Understood. After the call ended, Keanu sat in the empty coffee shop, watching darkness slowly claim the Los Angeles skyline. The dealership's lights flickered on in the distance, their glow a beacon against the gathering night. Tonight's meeting was not just about one stolen motorcycle. It was his chance to expose an entire criminal operation. But more than that, it was about reclaiming something that had been taken from him. Not just inventory or money, but trust. The fundamental belief that the people he worked with shared his values and his vision. Marcus, Vanessa, possibly Garrett, possibly Brandon. People he had welcomed into his business, into his professional family. People who had smiled at him, shaken his hand, wished him well while systematically dismantling everything he had built. He closed his laptop and finished the cold coffee in one long swallow. The bitterness seemed appropriate somehow. In a few hours, the truth would come out. But first, he had preparations to make, equipment to gather, a plan to finalize, and a lifetime of trust to rebuild from the ashes of betrayal. The sun had long since set when Keanu parked his rental car 3 blocks from the dealership. The familiar neon sign of Pacific Coast Motors cast its blue glow against the night sky. looking different now than it had that morning. Less like a beacon of success, more like a signal fire for criminals who had turned his dream into their hunting ground. He checked his equipment one last time, phone fully charged, small video camera ready, voice recorder running in his breast pocket. The preparations felt strangely familiar, echoing rituals from a different time in his life. Just like the old days, he murmured to himself, remembering those early years when he would work late into the night repairing bikes in his tiny garage with nothing but determination and calloused hands. Only this time, he was not fixing machines. He was trying to repair something far more fragile. Trust that had been shattered, faith that had been exploited, a legacy that had been corrupted from within. The service lot was dark, except for the security lights casting long shadows across the pavement. From his vantage point behind a delivery truck, Keanu could see the employee parking area where a single car remained, a black Honda Civic, Marcus' car. The warehouse's side door opened, spilling yellow light onto the asphalt. Marcus emerged, phone pressed to his ear, gesturing animatedly, even from this distance. Keanu could read the tension in his body language. This was not the confident swagger of a man who had been successfully running a theft operation for months. This was the nervous energy of someone under pressure. Something was wrong with their usual routine. A second figure stepped out of the shadows. Vanessa, she was dressed entirely in black, her usual cheerful sales demeanor replaced by a hardened expression that Keanu had never seen during business hours. The two engaged in what appeared to be a heated argument, their voices too low to carry, but their body language speaking volumes. "Come on," Keanu whispered, adjusting his camera's focus. "Show me what you're really up to." A white van pulled into the lot, its headlights off. It circled around to the loading dock, backing up to the large roll-up door with practiced precision. The driver stayed inside, engine idling, ready for a quick departure. Two more figures emerged from the warehouse, pushing a motorcycle covered in moving blankets. Even under the covers, Keanu recognized the distinctive profile of the Ducati Panigale V4R, the same bike he had sat on that very morning. The same bike that was supposed to be safely locked in the showroom, waiting for a legitimate buyer who would never come. His suspicions deepened when a second van appeared, then a third. The loading dock transformed into a hive of activity as more bikes were rolled out, each one representing tens of thousands of dollars in stolen merchandise. But more importantly, each one represented a betrayal of everything his dealership stood for. This isn't about a single bike theft. Keanu realized with growing horror, they're moving their entire operation tonight. Right on schedule, a black SUV entered the lot. The young man from that morning, the one Keanu had mentally labeled the collector, stepped out along with two unfamiliar faces. They moved with military precision, scanning their surroundings in a way that screamed professional criminals rather than casual buyers looking for a discount. This was organized crime, sophisticated, coordinated, and far more dangerous than a simple employee theft ring. Then came the moment that cut deepest. A familiar SUV pulled into the lot. Keanu's heart sank as Garrett Stone stepped out and walked directly to Marcus, greeting him with a familiar handshake that spoke of partnership rather than coincidence. 15 years. 15 years of morning coffees and late night security checks. 15 years of birthday cards and holiday bonuses. 15 years of trusting this man with the keys to everything Keanu had built. And it had all been a lie. The final piece clicked into place when Brandon Hayes emerged from the warehouse carrying a stack of papers. Even from a distance, Keanu recognized them, the new digital inventory system contracts, the ones he was scheduled to sign tomorrow morning. The system that would have made their entire operation impossible to maintain. They were not just stealing bikes anymore, they were running, cleaning out everything they could carry before the new security measures exposed their scheme. Keanu was documenting everything, his camera capturing faces and license plates when a security light suddenly swept across his position. Just a moment, A brief flash of illumination, but enough. Marcus froze mid-conversation. His eyes turned toward the shadows where Keanu was hiding, narrowing with sudden recognition. "What?" Marcus' voice carried across the quiet lot. "That guy from this morning." There was no point in hiding anymore. Keanu rose from his position, calmly pocketing his phone. Marcus and Garrett moved toward him immediately, cutting off his path to the street. He did not run. Running would accomplish nothing now. "I already called the police," Keanu said quietly, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "You have about 5 minutes." Marcus's face contorted with recognition and rage. Reeves should have known the great owner couldn't resist playing detective. "Actually, I was just doing some routine customer satisfaction research." Keanu met his gaze without flinching. "Imagine my surprise when I discovered such dissatisfied employees." Vanessa had approached now, her sales floor warmth completely absent. "You should walk away. Pretend you didn't see anything. You're a movie star. You have money, fame, everything. Why do you even care about this place?" The question hung in the air between them. Keanu considered it carefully before answering. "Because this isn't about money," he said finally. "It never was. This is about trust, about building something that matters, about the people who work here honestly, who believe in what we do." He paused, looking at each of them in turn. "I trusted you, all of you, and you used that trust to steal from me." Garrett stepped forward, his voice softer, but no less threatening. "Keanu, think about this. You expose us, it becomes a scandal. Your name in the papers, your dealership associated with crime. Is that what you want? Just walk away. We'll be gone by morning. No one needs to know you were ever here." For a long moment, Keanu was silent. When he spoke, his voice carried a sadness that surprised even himself. "I built this place with my own hands. Garrett, I remember when you started. I remember your daughter's graduation, your wife's surgery, every Christmas party where you told me this job was the best thing that ever happened to you." He shook his head slowly. "Was any of that real? Or was I just a mark to you from the very beginning?" Before Garrett could answer, the night exploded into chaos. Blue and red lights flooded the service lot. Sirens shattered the silence. Voices boomed through megaphones, commanding everyone to freeze. "FBI! Nobody move!" The carefully orchestrated operation dissolved into panic. People scattered in every direction. Van engines roared to life. In the confusion, Keanu saw Marcus sprinting toward the back fence, a duffel bag clutched to his chest. Without thinking, Keanu ran to his rental car, started the engine, and swung around the corner to cut off Marcus' escape route. The look of recognition on Marcus's face as Keanu stepped out of the vehicle was almost worth everything he had been through that day. The duffel bag dropped to the pavement, its contents spilling across the asphalt. Stacks of cash bound with rubber bands glinted under the security lights. "You should have stayed in your fancy world." Marcus snarled, his chest heaving, playing pretend with your Hollywood friends. "What do you know about real life? About struggling, about doing whatever it takes to survive?" Keanu stood his ground, calm in the face of Marcus' fury. "I know more than you think," he replied quietly. "I take the subway. I sit alone in parks. I built this dealership with these hands and sleepless nights when I had nothing but a dream and a second-hand toolkit." He took a step closer, his voice dropping. "You think I didn't notice because I didn't care. But the truth is, I didn't notice because I trusted people. I believed in the good in them. That was my mistake." He paused, letting the words settle. "But betraying that trust, that was your choice, not mine." 2 officers rushed in to secure Marcus, pinning him to the ground and fastening handcuffs around his wrists. He did not resist, but his eyes never left Keanu's face, filled with something between hatred and bewilderment. Across the lot, the arrests continued methodically. Agent Sarah Mitchell directed her team with calm efficiency as each conspirator was detained and rid their rights. Vanessa was led past in handcuffs, her cold composure finally cracking. She said nothing. but her eyes glistened with tears she was too proud to shed. Brandon was pleading with anyone who would listen, his words tumbling over each other in desperate justification. "I didn't know it was this big. Marcus told me it was just a few bikes. He said the owner would never notice. He said no one was listening. Garrett was the last to be brought past. When he saw Keanu standing there, he stopped, forcing the officers to pause. Keanu," his voice trembled. I'm sorry. I don't know how it got this far." It started small, and then the silence stretched between them, heavy with 15 years of memories now tainted by betrayal. "I know," Keanu said finally, "but sorry doesn't fix what you've done. It doesn't give back what you've taken. Not just from me, but from everyone who trusted you." Garrett nodded, a broken man, and let the officers lead him away. From across the lot, Marcus made one final attempt. "He's the owner!" he shouted, struggling against his restraints. He knew about everything. Check the records. He was in on it from the start. Agent Mitchell approached Marcus with measured steps. "We have 6 months of surveillance showing Mr. Reeves had no involvement in this operation, unless you'd like to explain how he was simultaneously running the scheme and building a case against it." Marcus' face fell as he realized his attempt to drag Keanu down with him had failed completely. When the last police car had departed with its prisoners, Keanu stood alone in the empty service lot. The loading dock was still open. Evidence markers scattered across the concrete where stolen motorcycles had been lined up for transport. Agent Mitchell approached with a thick file folder tucked under her arm. "We'll need your help documenting everything that was stolen," she said. "And you should know this organization has a history of retaliation. We can provide protection if you're concerned." Keanu shook his head, an idea already forming. "No, I have a different plan. One that will make sure no one targets this dealership again." He pulled out his phone, scrolling to his PR team's number. It was time to get ahead of the story. By tomorrow morning, every news outlet in Los Angeles would know that Pacific Coast Motors had helped the FBI bust a major criminal ring. No gang would dare target his dealership after this. Too high profile, too much attention, too much risk. Agent Mitchell watched him with a mixture of respect and curiosity. "Mr. Reeves," she called as he began to dial. "Just out of curiosity, what made you decide to go undercover yourself instead of hiring investigators?" Keanu looked up at the dealership's neon sign, still glowing proudly against the night sky despite everything that had happened beneath it. "Because sometimes," he said quietly, "the only way to protect what you've built is to remember how you built it in the first place." 6 months had passed since that fateful night in the service lot. Pacific Coast Motors gleamed under the Los Angeles sunshine. But the transformation went far deeper than fresh paint and polished floors. The dealership had been reborn, not just in its security systems, but in its very soul. Keanu stood in the center of the showroom, watching a young couple admire a Triumph Street triple near the front window. The woman sat on the motorcycle while her partner snapped photos, both of them grinning with the pure, uncomplicated joy that only a new dream could bring. This was what his dealership was meant for: genuine enthusiasm, honest transactions, and the simple pleasure of 2 wheels and an open road. "Mr. Reeves," a familiar voice called from behind him. Sarah Mitchell approached with a tablet tucked under her arm, a slight smile playing at the corners of her mouth. After the arrests, the former FBI agent had surprised everyone by accepting his job offer, trading her badge for a chance to revolutionize dealership security from the private sector. "The quarterly audit results are in," Sarah said, handing him the tablet. "I think you'll be pleased." Keanu scrolled through the report, nodding with quiet satisfaction. Every motorcycle accounted for, every transaction transparent, every security protocol followed to the letter. But more importantly, customer satisfaction scores had reached an all-time high. "The tracking program is working better than expected," Sarah continued as they walked toward the newly redesigned warehouse. Every high-end model now has a built-in GPS unit, completely invisible unless you know where to look, and the blockchain-based verification system makes it impossible to forge ownership records. They passed the service department, where a team of mechanics worked in a space that looked more like a high-tech laboratory than a traditional garage. Each tool was digitally tracked, each repair documented with video recordings, and each part verified through a secure supply chain. But the best part, Sarah said with a grin, is what happened in San Diego last week. Remember those copycats who tried to pull the same scam at Coastal Motors? They didn't get very far, did they? Keanu replied with a quiet chuckle. The would-be thieves had walked straight into a police sting. Thanks to the inter-dealership alert system he had helped develop in the months following his own ordeal. What had once been his greatest vulnerability had become a model for the entire industry. The warehouse doors slid open with a soft hiss, revealing neat rows of motorcycles secured with state-of-the-art locks. But what caught Keanu's attention was the group of people gathered near the training area, new employees going through their orientation. "Morning, everyone," he called out, deviating from his path to approach the group. Fresh faces turned toward him, a mix of excitement and nervousness in their expressions. These were not ordinary hires, they were participants in the Ride Forward program, a second chance initiative Keanu had established in the wake of the scandal. People with difficult pasts, former offenders who wanted to rebuild their lives, and young men and women who had made mistakes but deserved an opportunity to prove they could do better. A young man near the front raised his hand. Jake, a former street racer who had spent 8 months in jail for participating in illegal races. His file had been flagged by traditional background checks and rejected by every other employer in the industry. "Mr. Reeves," Jake said, his voice carrying a mixture of gratitude and disbelief, "I just wanted to say thank you for trusting us. Most places wouldn't even look at my application." Keanu studied the young man's face, seeing echoes of his own youth in those uncertain eyes. "Trust has to be built," Keanu replied, addressing the entire group, "but everyone deserves the chance to build it." He paused, letting the words settle before continuing. 6 months ago, I discovered that the people I trusted most had been deceiving me. I could have become bitter and suspicious of everyone. I could have built walls so high that no one would ever get close enough to hurt me again." The new employees listened in silence, their attention fixed on every word. "But instead, I learned something. Trust doesn't mean being blind. Leadership doesn't mean being distant. And giving someone a second chance doesn't mean forgetting the past. It means believing in the future. Every person standing here, regardless of where you've been or what you've done, has value. What matters is what you choose to do with the opportunity you've been given." The trials had concluded just 3 weeks earlier. The verdicts had been covered extensively by local media. Though Keanu had declined every interview request, Marcus Webb received 15 years in federal prison. The investigation had revealed connections to similar operations in 3 other states, transforming a local theft ring into a sprawling criminal enterprise that had defrauded dealerships out of millions of dollars over nearly a decade. Vanessa Cole, because she had cooperated with investigators and testified against her former partners, received 4 years of probation and a permanent ban from working in the automotive industry. Brandon Hayes was sentenced to 6 years for document forgery and money laundering. During his trial, he had broken down on the stand, admitting that Marcus had convinced him Keanu was an exploitative boss who deserved to be stolen from, a lie that had seemed easier to believe than the truth. Garrett Stone received the heaviest sentence among the dealership employees, 10 years. His position of trust, his length of service, and his systematic betrayal of security protocols all weighed against him in the judge's final decision. Keanu had attended the sentencing hearing, not out of vengeance, but because something inside him needed closure. "Do you have anything you wish to say, Mr. Reeves?" the judge had asked, offering him the opportunity to make a victim impact statement. Keanu had risen slowly, feeling the weight of 15 years of memories pressing down on his shoulders. "Your Honor," he had said, "I'm not here to ask for a harsher punishment. I'm here to say something to Garrett directly, if the court will permit." The judge had nodded. Keanu had turned to face his former head of security, the man who had shared countless morning coffees and late-night conversations, who had celebrated victories and mourned losses alongside him. "Garrett," he had said quietly, "I forgive you." A murmur had rippled through the courtroom. "Not because what you did was acceptable, not because the damage can be undone, but because holding on to anger would only hurt me more than it would ever hurt you. I've carried enough burdens in my life. I'm not going to carry hatred too." Garrett had broken then. The stoic face he had maintained throughout the trial crumbled, and tears streamed down his weathered face. "Keanu," he had managed to say, his voice cracking, "I let greed blind me. You treated me like family and I betrayed you. I don't deserve forgiveness." "Maybe not," Keanu had replied gently, "but that's not your decision to make. It's mine." Back in the present, Keanu led the orientation group outside, where a cluster of teenagers had gathered around several older motorcycles near the training track. "The Ride Forward program isn't just about employment," he explained. "We run free motorcycle safety courses, we mentor at-risk youth, and we partner with local police to promote legal, responsible riding." A 16-year-old boy was listening intently as a mechanic explained the basics of engine maintenance. His eyes shone with a passion that Keanu recognized instantly, the same light that had burned in his own heart decades ago. "Motorcycles saved me," Keanu said to the new employees, his voice soft but clear. "When I lost people I loved, when life seemed to lose its meaning, the sound of an engine and the freedom of the road pulled me through my darkest days. If we can give that to even one young person, if we can help them find passion instead of trouble, then everything we went through, all the pain and betrayal, becomes worth something." Later that afternoon, Sarah found Keanu in the employee break room, sitting at a table with several mechanics, sharing sandwiches and easy conversation. "You didn't use your private office again," she observed, leaning against the door frame. Keanu shrugged. "I was a mechanic once. I like it better here than sitting alone behind a desk." "How did you get here this morning?" "Subway. Less hassle than driving during rush hour." Sarah shook her head with a small laugh. "A Hollywood star worth millions taking public transit to work. Only Keanu." The young couple from the showroom walked past, now proud owners of the Triumph Street triple they had been admiring. The woman paused when she noticed Keanu, her eyes widening with recognition. "Wet, are you Keanu Reeves? I didn't know you worked here." Keanu smiled warmly. "I don't really work here, I just belong here." He nodded toward their new motorcycle. "Beautiful choice. Take good care of it." As the couple departed, practically glowing with excitement, Sarah moved to stand beside him. "You know," she said thoughtfully, "most business owners would have stepped back after something like this. Hired managers avoided the spotlight, protected themselves. I'm not most business owners," Keanu replied, his eyes following the Triumph as it disappeared around the corner. Evening approached slowly, painting the Los Angeles sky in shades of orange and purple. The showroom lights dimmed to their nighttime setting, and the neon sign of Pacific Coast Motors began to glow against the darkening horizon. Keanu stood alone for a moment, watching his team prepare to close for the day. Jake was helping a new trainee organize tools in the service bay. Sarah was running final security checks on her tablet. The young people from the mentorship program were reluctantly heading home, already talking about when they could come back. This was what he had built, not just a business, but a community, not just a dealership, but a second chance for people who needed one. Sarah approached one final time as the last employees filtered out. Can I ask you something personal? Of course. Why did you really forgive Garrett after everything he did? Keanu was quiet for a long moment, considering the question carefully. Because anger is a weight, he said finally. And I've carried enough weight in my life already. Losing people I loved, watching dreams fall apart, building them back up again. He paused. Holding on to resentment would only make that burden heavier. Forgiveness isn't about letting someone off the hook. It's about setting yourself free. Sarah nodded slowly, absorbing his words. And the biggest lesson you learned from all of this? Keanu looked out at the showroom one last time. The motorcycles gleamed under the soft lights, each one a promise waiting to be fulfilled. The neon sign cast its familiar blue glow through the windows, no longer a beacon for criminals, but a symbol of resilience. Never judge a person by their appearance, he said quietly. Never let success make you forget your humble beginnings. And most importantly, he turned to look at Jake, at the teenagers, at every person who had been given an opportunity to start over. Everyone deserves a second chance, even yourself. The doors of Pacific Coast Motors closed for the night, but the lessons of the past 6 months would remain open forever. In a city of broken dreams and second acts, Keanu Reeves had proven that trust, once shattered, could be rebuilt. That betrayal, however painful, did not have to define the future, and that sometimes the greatest victories came not from punishing those who wronged you, but from lifting up those who had been left behind.